Just like to take the opportunity to welcome everyone to the European Teams user group for May. We've got a lot to go through today, so I'm going to get straight to it. So we are going to kind of really break this down into three parts for today. The first part is we're going to look a little bit about the history of the group. I mean, it's an interesting time, and I'll explain a little bit of that in a minute. But we are kind of going to go and make some changes moving forward, and they're going to be good changes, but it's a kind of almost a fork in the road period for us, and it's a really interesting time. We're all in unprecedented times, and there's a lot of kind of opportunity, I think, to be involved with us going forward. So we're going to look at the history and where we are, and look to the future in the first part. In the second part, we are going to have a roundtable about TeamsFest. So TeamsFest happened at the beginning of April. So it's been almost, I guess, 2 months since it was over. And we would like to give you a show of the numbers and show of, what was good, what was bad, what areas of improvement there are going forwards. And we're going to open this up for a bit of discussion so that you can give us some direct feedback, so we can take that on board. And as you've probably been seeing in social media, we've been saying that we've got some exciting announcements coming up. So that's what we're going to focus on for part 3. I really do think that, you'll like these announcements. They're very exciting, but I'm gonna keep silent until we come up to them later on in the session today. So starting out about the history of the European Teams user group, the group was started in January 2019, and that was established by Adam and myself. And I remember the period quite well because I'd met Adam on the Microsoft Tech community. I don't think we even knew Vesku at that time, but we enjoyed working on the tech community and answering people's questions. And we were thinking about MVP in the future, because we both attended a session probably about a month before that. So I think it was in December. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. But we wanted to do something for the community. I mean, we both had an idea to start a local user group, as it were, in our respective countries. So myself here in the UK and Adam in Sweden. But on talking to one another, we didn't really want to restrict ourselves to specific countries. So we thought we'd do it a bit broader. And when thinking about what this user group was, we wanted to keep it simple. We wanted to keep it inclusive and get as many people to be able to participate as possible. So that's where our kind of ethos came from, and we've just outlined that in 3 basic points. We say them every single session. We want to grow a network of Teams professionals in Europe. We get so much from talking with people and working together and putting our minds together to be able to make Teams work for us and get the value out of it. Secondly, we wanted to give members regular meetups and to be able to present at those meetups. It's not about it, and it wasn't, and it's never been about just Adam and myself or Vesku, or we want this to be about having opportunities to come and present what it is that and it can be about teams and development, or teams and security, or teams and adoption, or voice, or meetings, or any one of the team subjects. We are interested to hear about it. But I think that, we speak at a lot of events now, but we didn't back then. We were only just really starting out on our journey. And we really wanted people like us to come forward that have something new to say, have a fresh perspective on things, and can bring the wealth of their experience and have a platform to share that. We wanted to be able to help you as speakers, with you to be able to get some experience and to be able to become a better speaker, so that you can feel more confident going forward at the more formal events, or if you wanted to apply for something like Inspire or Ignite in the future. And thirdly, we wanted to democratize Teams knowledge and experience. In other words, we are totally against knowledge being siloed off to specific individuals. I just want to take from my own personal experience. When I started out in a company that I worked for, there was an MVP there, and that MVP siloed all the information to themselves so that they could leverage it for their own good, their own kind of promotion within the business. And how can I put it? It's not really fair. People deserve access to be able to go as far as they possibly want within Teams. So these user groups are to bring people to speak and help them to speak, but it's also as well to transfer that information to other people. We want everyone to be able to have unfettered access to that information. So we established the user group in January of 2019. We had our first user group March 2019, and if my memory serves me correct, it was Rick Van Russo and Laurent Carlier, I think, were the first two that spoke to us. Vesku spoke a couple of months later. I think that was in the May session of 2019. And after we had run a few kind of user groups, we had this kind of crazy idea to come up with a conference where we could do it larger scale and bring a lot more people to be able to speak. And that was where the seeds of the first TeamsFest came together. We didn't call it TeamsFest at the time. It was Oktoberfest. And it was during that period that we got to know Vesku very well. And so Vesku really helped us a lot with the organisation of Oktoberfest, and it was Vesku who came up with the name for TeamsFest, and it immediately stuck. And during that first conference, we ended up flipping over between kind of hashtag Oktoberfest and hashtag TeamsFest, and the TeamsFest one ran out. So it was our pleasure to really bring Vesku on board formally after that first conference, and then the rest really kind of became history. We made sure that we did the user group on a regular occasion. We had some wonderful speakers, some of them that I can think of, Eric Marcy, Vesku himself. We've had talks from Adam and myself. We've had, as I say, Rick, Laurent, and many others. And we've really got to know people very well over the course of the last year. And the people that have spoken in the user group tend to come along and speak at TeamsFest too. So we had TeamsFest, the second one, in April 2020. So that was 2 months ago. And you know, just to get an idea of the numbers for TeamsFest and an idea of how well that went. So we had 25, I think it was, speakers in the original TeamsFest, and we decided to scale it up quite significantly. We moved to 43, and whereas the first one was wholly of speakers within Europe, again we broadened this out to have speakers from the US and speakers from the Asia Pacific region too. So we had speakers from 15 different countries. Now, adding up all of that content, that was 18 or over 18 hours worth of content, and we had 700 attendees. I think we got somewhere around about 400 for the first and 700 for the second, with I think it was 150 individual feedbacks, which, just to note, I was a little bit late on sending them out. I only sent them out last week. But if you can see the metrics down the bottom, 4.7 out of 5 for all up. So that was the all up score for the event. People came along to that one-day TeamsFest session and they really enjoyed the event. They really thought it had some value. In terms of the speakers, one of the things that's the most important for us is to get quality speakers, people that can deliver. Now, I just want to make an important point. We don't do events that are MVP only or RD only, or Microsoft are a certain percentage. It's very important for us to bring through new speakers in these events, but we have just been terribly lucky with the quality of what people are bringing to the table. And the last figure, I think, speaks for itself. 88% NPS score. That's a net promoter score. And that was asking the question as to whether they would come back for another TeamsFest in the future. Now that is basically saying that 9 out of 10 would come back on the next TeamsFest, and they felt that it was of great value to them. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank every single speaker for doing an amazing performance on the day. It was unbelievable, and it was super busy. As Vesku or Adam may tell you, we only got to see about 2 or 3 sessions ourselves because we were moderating across the rest of the others. I've seen probably 3/4 of them so far. I've still got the rest to watch, and I know the guys I've seen all of them that I think. So every single event, it was just such an impressive event, and so thank you again. So that kind of leads us to the next question. We've been pretty quiet. We didn't have a user group at the end of April, simply because TeamsFest took over our lives for much of March and for the weeks afterwards, because the weeks afterwards meant that after we recorded the sessions, we'd have to get the content onto YouTube, and then we would have to work on things like individual feedback. So we took a little bit of a break. So we wanted to, I think, firstly recharge the batteries. It is tough work for anyone that's organised, an event of that size, whether it's online or in person. There's just so much to kind of consider and dot the I's, dot the T's. Secondly, we've had a lot of speaking engagements this month. So we organised TeamsFest and we organised the European Teams user group, but Adam, Vesku and I all regularly speak at other conferences. So we've had conferences, we've had a deluge this last month. We've had Microsoft 365 Israel, we've had Microsoft 365 Summit Spain, Teams Community DE, we've got Microsoft 365 Marathon later this week, and we've got Galactic Summit next week. Vesku was speaking at Cloud 8. So, and we a lot of us that are on this call are probably speaking at Commsverse. So there is, again, there has been a terrific amount in terms of speaking opportunities and engagements, and hopefully that will continue during the summer. Third, and probably this is the reason most of all, is that we had to think about where we wanted to go next, what we wanted to do. I guess is that we are very busy, all of us. So everyone on the call is terrifically busy at this moment, not just with this speaking engagements, but in these unprecedented times with lifestyle changes, with jobs, and if you're in cloud and you're working in cloud, then the feeling across the board is that work has absolutely gone through the roof. But we wanted to, I think, begin to think about something more formal. Now, for the last year and a half, whilst the European Teams user group has existed, it has been very informal. We'll put up join links on Twitter like 2 days before, and we don't know who the members of the user group are, because whilst we have a Twitter group and it has over 800 people in it, we don't know who turns up regularly. We see some people some months, and some people it's very much in a drop-in style. And Vesku, myself and Adam have been talking about this in the background, and we've decided to really go ahead and make this a little bit more informal. Formal in terms of, we want our the members of the user group to be notified on a more regular basis and have oversight of, well in advance of when the next user group's going to be, that it's in their diaries. We'll explain a little bit about that in a bit. So it's a very interesting time. That was our history so far. I must admit, it's been a pleasure doing the user group. I've met so many great people. Vesku, Adam, have you got anything to say on that in terms of the history?
It was an interesting kind of a summary of that. I have to point out about the history that I was in the first meeting with Rick. I had to look that up. I had to look that up from the YouTube recordings. But yeah, I've been around more or less since the start, and then eventually getting more of you guys. And the TeamsFest was just, I don't know, crazy. So I was just chatting there in the meeting chat about, I had basically 5 Teams meetings open. In the desktop, I had 1 active one and 3 on hold, and then I have a separate one on the browser. And yeah, it was hectic going through everything. And so we may have some lessons learned from that, considering the next year and what's coming up. So I guess, I don't know, what did you want to know?
Well, I mean, I just remember how off the cuff that first session was, and in terms of that, we just all turned up. I think it was like 1 member within that, and then 18 months down the line, we're doing a conference for 700 people, and we've built up a lot of relationships and stuff over the past 18 months, and we love the community. And it is just it's been really good, and I think, you know, after we get to the announcements, we're going to kind of take it to the next level. So in terms of the second part now, in terms of the roundtable, we've given the numbers for TeamsFest. We've kind of shown that the conference was an absolute success on every level. So we wanted to put some questions to everyone in terms of what was good, what was bad, and that you can kind of feed back to us. So I've got 8 questions here, you know, that will take up maybe, I would say, the next 20 to 25 minutes, maybe. Let's have an active discussion. So what made TeamsFest a success for you? Now, Vesku, you said before, at the start that, you know, you didn't want to, you know, answer so many questions. We're going to start out with you, Vesku. So what made TeamsFest a success for you?
That's, of course, I should have guessed this. Well, basically, well, the scores. In a way, of course, it was a success because so many people joined up. So many people were enjoying the TeamsFest. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me, is the community was very well involved. We had a huge number, or good number of session submits, where we had to do real work to select the ones who kind of fitted the TeamsFest agenda the best. So that's kind of things, bringing into community perhaps and making it successfully. So that's why I think that's why it was a success. It's I'd like to reflect that more from that community part.
That's awesome. How about you, Adam?
Well, I mean, as Vesa said, I mean, the score sums it all up, but in the end, it's all about the all the awesome content, the speakers, and I would also like to point out about the attendees as well, because we didn't have any kind of moderation. We, as we talked about earlier, Vesa and I was like kind of running through all the meeting rooms and checked and muted and stuff like that. But in the end, we didn't have to do that much, but because the attendees, like, they really helped out. They really felt, maybe hopefully they were like part of something, and they really helped everyone out. They answered questions. I mean, it was not that, you know, there was attendees that were went into like a meeting but they actually felt like they were part of it as well. So they really helped out, answering questions, moderating as well, and stuff like that. And that's, I mean, things like that makes it a success for me, at least.
That's awesome. And anyone else would like to say what made TeamsFest a success for them?
I guess Philip wants to speak because he used to raise hands.
Oh.
Absolutely. Philip?
But when I want to say something a little bit to optimize, maybe you could get a little bit deeper in some stuff, because I think in the European Teams user group, there are a lot of deep dive people around, and maybe we can get 1 or 2 sessions with a deeper technical level, like level 300 or more.
No, that's perfect. We were talking about that, and that's something that you're going to like, that we've got an answer for coming up in the announcements section. So we'll explain a little bit about that. You're right. So what happened is that in the user groups, it tends to be more in the 300 to 400 area. If I think of certain sessions, like Eric Marcy's session that he did on direct routing configuration, that went deep into that. When it comes to conferences, it's a lesson that we're looking to learn as organizers in terms of what people want to see. And I think that in conferences, you tend to verge more to what's going to appeal to the widest possible audience. So then you kind of steer more to the 200 to 300 as opposed to the deep dive. But that's something that we've certainly gonna take on board for the future. So that's a point well made. So thank you ever so much for bringing that up. Is there anyone else that what made TeamsFest a success to them? Magnus or Philip, is there anything that you felt that really stood out for you about the day?
Well, I can say that the best part for me was that there are so many sessions and so many various sessions, and that many people get a chance to be a speaker, and also that the attendees are very disciplined and helpful, and that makes it comfortable to be a presenter. So I really enjoyed the whole event.
That's perfect. Yeah, we have to put a hand to the audience. The fact that so many people turned up and so many people had great etiquette in the meeting, when it is possible at this point to unmute yourself within a Teams meeting. Some did ask us about whether it would kind of better suit from being at live events as opposed to meetings, and we made the decision to go with meetings because people could unmute themselves and people could let their voice be heard. And it's nice sometimes to hear people's voice as opposed to just come up in chat. And I think that we would probably look to do that format again. So, no, thank you ever so much for that.
Thanks.
Okay, so that is brilliant. So we've seen some things that's made TeamsFest a success in terms of great presenters, great attendees, a nice easy setup, no interruptions. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, what was your favorite session that you attended? Now, I won't be offended if you don't say, if you don't say the key, the kind of the keynote, the starting one that I did, because there were just so many terrific speakers last time around. Let's start off with Adam. Adam, from the sessions that you've seen at TeamsFest in April, which one was your favorite?
I'm going to be pretty diplomatic here. I think I won't pick a favorite one. The overall quality of all the sessions was very high, and and they were also, Teams is not a topic that's, it's all about the same stuff. It's so broad, right? There's so many topics within Microsoft Teams as well. So they all were very different in that sense as well. So I just wanna say like the quality was awesome, the speakers was awesome. I got a few favorites, but I'll keep them for myself. But yeah, all of the sessions were great.
Okay, perfect. Vesku, how about you?
Being diplomatic or not, yeah, the sessions was great overall. Like there's huge number of excellent sessions. So picking up one is I don't know if it's fair towards the others, but I have to say that I really enjoyed Chris Webb's session about the live events. Because that had the way he presented that one and had bringing in the video to the background of Teams meetings. That was really fun as well. But there's huge number of other great sessions. but that had it was really enjoying to watch.
OBS and the use of OBS is really picking up now with Teams. And if any of you have seen the announcements in terms of a Microsoft build of Teams NDI as well, which is, if we're looking at it from a directional standpoint, directing at starting to be able to cast up into public platforms as well, it's an exciting area of development for Teams. And Chris is generally regarded by all of us as probably being the one with the most knowledge on OBS. I mean, the guy's gone all in with a green screen, right? And it's quite clear that he produces events on a regular basis. So yeah, I mean, that was a great session. Anyone else? Any other members here today would like to just chime in and let's move away from the favorite session. What sessions had an impact on you? That's probably a better phrased question in terms of what made you go away and think, that it was really worth that going to that one session.
Well, I was going to say that's going to be a 300 level session coming up. I'm going to deep dive OBS next time, because I keep getting a lot of people asking about that. So less slides, more OBS.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, I must admit, I've like I say, I've probably seen about 75% one of the sessions that I came away with, I guess learning the most of all, was probably Rene Modery's session. In terms of Power Apps, just simply because it's an area that I'm looking to study more of. As Adam said, I mean, it's so broad in terms of what you can do with Teams. I think it's probably fair to say that it's impossible in terms to know it all. And this is one of the great things about the community. If you look at what Chris is doing with OBS and live events and producing that, if you look at what Vesku is doing with flows and automation with Teams, if you look at what Adam's doing in terms of his series on user adoption, we all have our areas with which we like to focus on. Let's move on to question 3. What do you think was the biggest challenge? Chris, I'm going to start with you, as you've, what do you think was the biggest challenge this time around, and what would you like to see in the future potentially?
Not sure. I mean, I went on mute a couple times. I don't know why, but luckily Vesa caught it. I think it just happened one time. But I mean, I think we're gonna have to look at live events for the next one, just based on. Well, I don't know. I mean, we didn't fill up that all the way, but I mean, you're starting to get to that point where the challenge is going to be riding the line on how many people are showing up. So do you go live events or not? And I'm kind of hoping that they expand the meeting attendees. That would help out a lot.
For sure. And something that maybe would be for the future as well is putting in a hard mute function. If that's something that's on their roadmap, I don't know whether it is or not, but I've seen a lot of that kind of picking up in tech community and on user voice, particularly from the education side. So like you say, if they raise the limit and put in some of these new features, we do have some decisions to make. How about you, Vesku? What do you think was the biggest challenge?
Time zones.
I
say that.
I was just about to look into the roadmap and user voice, but I think the attendee limit raised was in the user voice, and I think the hard mute was on the roadmap already or somewhere announced. But the time zones, of course, are the one thing, especially when we did it, it was the 1st of April, and we had just switched to the summertime in Europe. And that created a bit of confusion with some people. So I guess that's something we need to kind of improve there. What I heard or feel, well, from my perspective, of course, the biggest challenge during the event there wasn't that much time to stick around in one session instead of jumping around. So getting the big picture wasn't kind of the ideal there. So perhaps having more hands helping, that's to have more organization behind that will help to organize it better or run it through better as well.
Yeah,
but
that's perfect.
Yeah, and of course there wasn't too much issues about the muting. Perhaps Chris a few times and some other people, but mostly it was a very well behaving attendees, as it was said already. That was excellent people.
Adam, what about you? What did you find was, I mean, because I guess, Adam, for anyone that doesn't know, in the TeamsFest events, Adam is the designated principal moderator. So it's Adam that sets, all everything up in the background. So Adam does a lot of the legwork, as it were, behind the scenes. And I know Chris as well. Chris and Adam both worked on getting the uploads done on the YouTube platform after the event. Adam, what did you find was the biggest challenge of the day?
I found mostly, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, something you maybe didn't notice during the event, but I think that time zones, it's always a struggle for people. And I think like there were probably, and I know there were people like, oh, I missed it because I thought it was at another time and stuff like that. Then, I mean, the overall biggest challenge was to find a way to do this. And we thought about, are we going to do live events? Are we going to do this with normal Teams meetings, or are we going to do a mix? And we went through that track about doing a mix of like keynote speakers doing a live events or stuff like that. But we went with the Teams meetings with 5 rooms, and I mean, just to find that way and make it work was a little bit of a challenge. But I mean, it worked out this time around in a very good way, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think, going forward, we and I think one of the changes that we would be looking to make is maybe to do it in terms of Central European time, just simply because in Europe, that seems to be the one that people kind of measure their time zone against. I think that when this very first started out, I think that the British, right? They want to put their stamp on everything. So we did things in terms of British summertime, and towards the end we got taught, kind of more and more into Central European time. And so I think going forward, we would probably look to do it that way. And that would make a lot more sense because the majority of the audience was from this, in the Central European time zone, as opposed to being in the British summertime. What would you like to see next time? This is something that we want to ask all the members, as opposed to us. So for anyone else that's on the call, is there anything in particular you'd like to call out that you would like to see for next time that we can take on board?
Hi, Chris. Stephen.
Yes, excellent. I was just about to mention that you want to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting point, which I've heard discussed with some other user groups at the moment, is whether during this time we want to be recorded when presenting. I know it sounds slightly counterintuitive, but given the number of events that are happening, and normally presenters would travel around different events and give variations on the same theme multiple times, that becomes a little bit more challenging when they are actually recorded. So I know another group who decided they collectively took the decision not to be recorded, and people can join the event, be present for the day. It also encourages people to actually turn up at the event rather than just sign up and then just watch recordings later on. We then also I talked to another group who were doing recordings, the 365 May one, and it's an interesting there. So what are your guys' thoughts on the future of recordings? I don't think it's as easier topic to say yes, we'll just do it as people might think.
It's an interesting question. I mean, that's a great question, and to be honest, Vesku and myself have been having this conversation for at least the last week and a half, because Vesku has also mentioned the same thing. And Vesku, so tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think we're going to do an opt-in, aren't we, in the future, in terms of if you want, if you don't, or should I say, more of an opt-out, whereby if people don't want to be recorded either during the user group session, if they're going to use it multiple times, or at a future TeamsFest, I mean, I could probably give some personal experience here, right? So I've spoken at Microsoft 365 Summit Israel, Teams Community Day DE in Germany, Microsoft 365 Summit Spain. I'm speaking at I did the Cambridge Power Platform User Group, Collab or Galactic Summit, which is the virtual of collaboration summit, and the Microsoft 365 Marathon. And to be able to create individual sessions for all of those is a real lot of work. I mean, on top of a job and on top of, you know, and also as well, there's different audiences that are coming along to those events. So I can understand why, because when I very first started out doing community work, I never understood why people used the same session multiple times. But it's because, you know, it takes people a lot of time to be able to potentially put those decks together, and you also have to consider that there will be different audiences potentially in different countries watching them. But you know, I think it is a subjective thing, but I completely understand why people wouldn't, and I think that's why we're deciding to go with the opt-out. That if people don't want their session recorded going forward, then yeah, we can kind of completely understand that. Ultimately, when we create this event, you know, it's the speakers that are coming along with their sessions to present their sessions. They own the content, as it were. So they're the ones that should ultimately make the decision on whether they want for that to be recorded or not. I mean, we're in a slightly different position that our event is completely free. We haven't got any corporate sponsors. We don't have, you know, expect to make any money from this, and neither do we want to make any money on this. So we don't have any, like, kind of, there's no necessity to record those sessions.
No, I was just waiting to get it cut in, since you mentioned me about 10 minutes earlier. But yeah, it's a kind of a good discussion, I think, we should continue that and not stick up to a decision now yet about this recording part. And that was an excellent point, Stephen, because not everyone wants to be recorded there, and because they want to reuse the session. And they are, perhaps some people are afraid that if they are recorded once, they are not going to get an opportunity to speak anymore. I have reused one of my sessions several times, and half of the times it has been recorded. So it's not that clear, does it block the way or not? But I think that's something we have to discuss. And I would kind of welcome any opportunity that anyone else here has about that, or come back to us later. How do you feel about that? That might be a good idea for a poll as well, and start asking how it would.
I think I'd add the other thing that Daniel found, because they did the 365 Nashville group, was that Build, but I signed up and joined Build, but I only ever watched recordings, because time zones and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, people are sort of doing that. You know, we all probably have jobs to do as well at the same time. By not being recorded, people are sort of slightly forced to be more present at meetings, or to actually see the event. And then you get more of an ability to adapt your presentation to the audience. So I think it's certainly something to think about. It's, you know, there's lots of Teams content now on YouTube. There's lots of recordings of other sessions. Is everything going to be fresh and new again? I don't know. So I don't think it's necessarily necessary. So it's a very interesting topic, I think, for Teams community to think about, because it's very easy to do these recordings. If they were in present, if everyone was actually together at the same place, you might not do the recordings because the hassle of figuring it out is quite hard.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it is definitely a point, you know, to consider. The other kind of point I would say is that people like us, or shall I say yourself, Stephen, and and Vesku and Adam and myself, I mean, we're all Teams MVPs, right? So, you know, and we do our jobs in Teams. We work every day in Teams. We do various things with Microsoft on Teams. Generally speaking, you know, we are using Teams every day. We write blogs on it. You know, so we're going to be a lot more informed potentially than the people that come along, you know, to the actual events themselves. I mean, they might, you know, in brackets, know Teams, as it were, from users, but there still could be lots of areas that they don't know about. So we have to kind of consider that point too, in terms of the, you know, some of us are very well informed about Teams and what it does. And so I would imagine that if you came to a TeamsFest, Stephen, that you would probably know like 90% of the content already in there, that, you know, that is going to be there. However, you know, of people that have come along into TeamsFest previously, do they, you know, do they have as much knowledge as we do of Microsoft Teams? Because they could just use it sporadically and want to know. But again, you know, that is a you know, something that we have talked about going forward. So that's awesome. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Philip has been.
Philip, I was just about to say as well.
Yeah. About point 4, what would you like next time? I would say there was so much good stuff around there. Maybe another way to display the agenda, like a bit of sorting or timetable scheduling, because it was a hard choice to do which room I joined to which time.
Yeah, I think I heard that during the actual event, Philip, from a few other people. So next time we will ensure that there is a full-on schedule that's up.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, because, you know, kind of getting conscious of time. What lessons would you give to others in terms of if anyone else is holding their user group of kind of event or wanting to do an event like TeamsFest? Should we start out with you on this one, Vesku?
You keep on targeting me. Okay. Yeah. What lessons? Get started. It's really easy to do with Teams. So if you have an idea, if you are thinking about user group, start building it up. Of course, like it has been said, there's lots of events going on, lots of recordings. So try to make it your unique. Try to stand out a bit. But the main thing is still to start with that. And I like to also think about how you can bring in as much people as possible. So the inclusiveness part. So is it about the time zones? Is it about the language? How you are going to build up and think about your audience there?
Awesome. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much to add there. I mean, as I said, pick something that stands out, but at the same time, just don't take like it shouldn't just stand out. But you must have some sort of like big passion for what you're doing as well. So that both of those is very important, so to speak. Just figure it out. Like start small, try to build it up, and take people for help. Like it's so much better and easier, more efficient when you have people on board that helps you out doing stuff. So, I mean, teamwork, right? So that's my kind of recommendation.
Awesome. We're going to have 2 kind of questions to finish off. The first, and you know, quite another kind of topical point to follow Stephen's. Do you feel like the market has become saturated with virtual events? Who should we start that off? Chris, do you want to start that one?
Typing in chat.
Chris there.
Which one were we on? The saturated, the number 6?
Yeah, number 6. Do you feel the market has become saturated with virtual events?
You know, it kind of seems that way, to be honest. Every time you turn around, there's something going on you got to go to or don't want to miss. And I know you guys are speaking like crazy. I always tell y'all take a chill pill on that, but I don't know. 'Cause, I mean, it's all optional. So I mean, more is better than not enough, in my opinion. So I mean, I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, as long as the audience is still showing up and people are participating, then I don't think it's too saturated. I mean, it's all optional. It's not like people are forced to go to this stuff. So if people are showing up and they're enjoying it and you're getting good ratings, then they're doing them.
No, perfect answer. Stephen, how about you? What do you think about this?
I think it's interesting, and yeah, what Chris said, it's up to what people. I think in terms of presenters, I must admit personally, I'm not doing many conferences because I can have just the same reach by doing my own YouTube videos as doing it through a presentation. And I know it's slightly different, but if it's all about, at the end of the day, it's about numbers of eyeballs getting the content they want. And so I think a lot of other people get a lot of value out of conferences as well. I think there's some good points in the chat there as well around how to be more interactive with these types of events. Now we've got great features like hands up, for example. Could you just do a ask the experts type sessions during your live events rather than purely presentation type content, which might be, I think, to me would be more stimulating and more engaging than delivering a presentation. But I guess I'm slightly different. I'm not really attending to necessarily to do the learning, but more to deliver stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Adam?
No, I mean, just to build on what others said here already. I mean, it's not about how much content, it's about the content and about the sessions themselves. I mean, there's so much going on all the time, so much new stuff coming out all the time. So I mean, it kind of never stops. There's always sessions about new stuff, how we can do things in many different ways and stuff like that. And as long as that sessions are, I mean, the new sessions are coming out, new speakers get the opportunity to speak and stuff like that. I think it's all good.
Well, that's great. There's some great perspectives. And because I want to move on to the announcements by 10 to, so that we finish off by the hour, the last question that I want to ask, Microsoft 365 Marathon is this week. I'm speaking, Adam's speaking, Veska is speaking. In fact, there are over 300 speakers and 400 sessions. That is a gigantic virtual online event. And I think Commsverse, which is happening in July, has over, I think it now is 100 unique speakers. Is bigger better? I mean, that's that remains a question. As we said, we started out in the first TeamsFest with 25. In the second one we did in April, we did 43. How big do you go? I'm going to start with Chris. Or Veska,
I know Morten has his hands up, so.
Okay. Is bigger better?
Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Morten.
Yeah, raise his hand. You gotta speak now.
Don't be shy. Okay, so I guess he has audio issues.
No worries. Well, if he comes back on it,
yeah, speak up when you figure it out.
Well, Veska, you start speaking, so what's your
You walked into that one.
Yeah, I was just helping Morten. Okay, is bigger better? Well, it is traditional answer. It depends. I guess the bigger, if you think of from the speaker perspective, when we are going to be presenting at the in the virtual marathon, I think we are going to have more audience than we have with some smaller of these events. as a point to the saturated market, basically, there are lots of events, so one event may not stand out. Some of the events have to build up some reputation. I'm hoping we have more reputation with TeamsFest, kind of, and that will create interest with people. So they are coming in. So, but if it's just about the trying to break some records and creating something huge, then I don't know. You are just a community part, or less. The more you have people, the less you have a possibility to kind of interact there and get to know people personally, I think. So is it better or not? So it just depends. I don't have a yes or no answer here. Sorry.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Vesku. I think you put out my point there, that in the saturated market you need to stand out, and one way to stand out could be have it bigger. But I'm not telling that necessarily that's better. One thing I would like to evaluate or try out for coming TeamsFest is a more active moderator role. Perhaps introducing the speaker, being more active in answering questions and muting. I mean, I know you guys were there, you're jumping in and out and posting links to evaluation and stuff, but it would have felt better to have some dedicated moderator there, so you can feel comfortable that people are muted as not supposed to be.
That's
also like taking questions and introducing next speaker and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's actually really good feedback on that, because we've been doing kind of like this MVP, train the MVP things around Teams lately, and we've all been kind of stepping in and helping each other do that. Not necessarily introduce the stuff, because we actually got Microsoft moderators that do that, which actually help, but we've been sitting in the chat as tech moderators answering questions throughout the event, and I think that's been really helpful for the attendees along the way, so you can kind of be there to help answer questions along the way instead of waiting and stopping or interrupting the presentations to answer those. So I think that's good.
Yeah, that's perfect feedback. I mean,
yes,
as Chris said.
Sorry, and I think that kind of brings in more formality, so it kind of more official way. I guess that's like feels like a real event where you have somebody coming up and introducing, and not just something that has been virtually ad hoc made.
Perfect. Well, I mean, it's been a perfect round table, and we've had some really, really great interaction and feedback. Just before we move on to the announcements, any questions from the audience? Is there anything that you would want to ask Vesku, Chris, Adam, or myself?
I don't have any questions, but just to your last point, as a fellow organiser's perspective on this is bigger, better. When you look at going from in-person to online because you have no other choice in the current climate, we had a lot of speakers from different worlds, or different parts of the world rather, and it's giving them content to do in their time zone, giving them the attendees in the country as well. So if you think about going across the globe, I mean, yes, we've got unique speakers in each. You split that, divide it by 3 to go into the time zones. So really, we're focusing on, an agenda for APAC, an agenda for EMEA, and an agenda for the US. And there will be speakers who will have content that might be repeated in different time zones to get to a different type of audience. And there also might be speakers who just might be speaking in their own time zone that's tailored to the regional needs and wants where they are, so they might not be speaking in EMEA. So I think the bigger is better is probably a wrong type of question. You just got to break it up to look at what you're trying to achieve, and we're basically focusing on 3 agendas on 3 focus times, but different type of people to join in their own time zones. We're not expecting European speakers to turn up at midnight their time to deliver a session in 4 p.m. Seattle time, where it might be. It's just not fair. So they'll come to do a session in their time. They'll reach predominantly European audience, and then American speakers will come in, do a session in their time zone, reach an American audience predominantly as well, and going to the point of recording. Guess it can be optional, but recording it gives value of those sessions that outreach your time zone. If you just flick back to and watch at your own time, but you still want to give enough reasons to join live to participate, whether that's ask me anything question answers, panel sessions, team interactions, games, and all that type of stuff. That's my point on it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we put together the second TeamsFest in April, we followed that approach of almost like follow the sun approach, whereby we had speakers from APAC, as it were, to start out with, moving through to the European time zone and then moving on to the US. So the US came in kind of later on during the day. So I mean, I think that is a perfect point in the it isn't. That's probably a wrong question. Is bigger better when things market themselves as being, the biggest and stuff? It is a, kind of a question, I would say, more upon value and whether that has value. So I think exactly what you said in terms of, again, trying to make these, and this goes against what Martin has said and what Stephen has said, is I think that because we're doing a lot more of these online events, we have to look to change up the format of them just being strict presentations. They need to be interactive. They need to be able to engage with their audience. So thank you very much for that feedback. That's been perfect.
Philip, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I don't want to stress the time much more, but one short thing I was thinking about is maybe there should be a session for us as consultants, how to get the evergreen and ever-changing system. How do you search for your information? How to prepare for an exam? And how do you solve like a customer who don't want to implement Teams the right way? How do you explain this stuff? And how do you live as consultants and don't, go over and spring down the bridge?
Okay, I mean, if you want to send through, kind of that feedback to us or leave it in the chat, then we'll take a look at it and we'll certainly go away and digest that. So thank you again so much for this roundtable discussion, and it's given us some great insights. I mean, we're always looking, even though we've done this twice, we're always looking to learn on where to improve in order to be able to make things better. And so we kind of move on to the announcements. The first announcement is that we're expanding the team, I guess. So during the first event, Vesku came on board, and now we're also saying a big welcome to Chris Webb. Chris, if you don't know Chris, I would connect with Chris on Twitter or LinkedIn. Chris is a Teams MVP from Texas in the US, my favorite state. Chris has a deep experience.
Yeah, I heard you kind of give that Texas a little extra.
I know that's a bit controversial, but I would live in Texas. I love it. Chris has a deep experience of Teams administration. I think he's well known for his sessions on live events, his use of OBS. But if you didn't know about Chris as well, he's also got a big experience of the Power Platform integration. And also as well, Chris is a tech community super user and a pretty much a superstar. He was there long before, Adam, myself, and others. I think he was right in from the beginning. Chris, do you want to say a few words for us?
Yeah, I mean, the tech community. I was there probably a year before you guys doing it, and then you guys all showed up, and we've all had that friendly competition of getting the most likes and answers since. But lately, it's been hard to get time in there because we've been doing so much other stuff. So I need to get back to the roots there a little bit. But yeah, as Chris said, I do live events just here and there, but do like doing OBS, do a lot of tricks with that, and I need to do some more sessions around it. But Power Platform's kind of my latest passion. I do Teams all the time, but I do a lot of Power Apps building and everything like that, and I really enjoy doing that. It's just kind of I've always been a developer at heart and never had the time to get into that, and Power Platform makes it easy without having to spend a lot of time learning how to develop. So it kind of best of both worlds there. So
and just so everyone knows that we kind of have a Kaisala group between Chris, Vesku, Adam, and myself, and we're always trying to get Chris to speak at more events and share, because he's a really great speaker, as you've seen from his session. So we're trying to get him on. We're doing a lot of events lately, and we're trying to get Chris and to get in with us. So we finally managed to get him into helping us run the user group and organising TeamsFest in the future. So that's a big victory for us. In terms of the second announcement, we are, as said, making a few changes going forward. So we're going to keep the monthly user group format. We're going to have the same values as previously. It's all about democratizing that information and giving people an opportunity to be able to speak at user groups. But what's changing, we're going to have a little bit more organization behind the scenes. So we're going to have, probably from this month onwards, a user group sign up and list, so that we can keep you notified of when the user group meetups are. We want to move away from just putting up links on Twitter and stuff and people joining or just knowing about it one day beforehand. We're going to schedule the speakers well in advance. Again, we tend to leave things pretty late, and the same week we're still organising these user group events. We're going to go to be moving with Rebrandly links, but also as well more opportunities in terms of moderation involvement at TeamsFest. That was a point that you made earlier. We were very conscious of the fact that we probably needed some more defined moderation roles to help and make things a little bit smoother, be able to allow the presenters to concentrate on presenting, as opposed to maybe having to answer in the chat or go back through. We have definitely found that as best practice over the course of all of the events this year. So now on to the third, and I guess the final announcement, the big one, okay, is that TeamsFest is returning. We've kind of hinted at it throughout the session today. It's returning on Wednesday, the 7th of October. Sponsored by Microsoft Teams and the tech community. Exactly the same. It's 100% free. It's a 100% community-driven event. We're looking forward to this one, and there's a reason. That's because we have all of these speaking at the event. We've already organised it. So Jeff Teeper, Ilya, Laurie, Puna, Mark, Anna Chu, Vesa Yavonen, and Mike Tolfson. They're all in, and they will all be speaking at TeamsFest in October. We have some others that are in conversation already about joining TeamsFest for Wednesday, the 7th of October. But we are absolutely over the moon that we've managed to get all of these particular ones. We've wanted a lot to speak at a TeamsFest in the last, but where we left it quite late, there was either scheduling issues or they'd already committed to other things at that time. So we're absolutely over the moon to be able to get them for TeamsFest in October. We are going to be releasing more information about TeamsFest in the coming months. The call to speakers is starting in July, so it will be from July the 1st to July the 31st, and it's a short window, but it's one that we wanted to have a shorter window so that people could have kind of time getting ready to be able to submit, and then they could submit during the window, as opposed to having a long 8-week window as we did last time, and then people left it kind of all to the last minute. So our kind of plan of attack, as it were, we're doing things in the background, to set up for TeamsFest right now and during June. So one of the changes that we're making is that we will be using Sessionize for the session submissions. The Sessionize page is already up and it's already ready to go. And again, we'll disclose that in time. During July, we'll have our call for speakers. Many of us, as said, are speaking at Commsverse in July. And for at least the first week of July, we're going to be focusing on Commsverse. I mean, it's a one-of-a-kind event. And we would encourage everyone to attend Commsverse where they can, because it is a great event in itself. And I spoke at Commsverse in store previously long, Mark, Randy and Martin and the guys, they're all really fantastic. They are incredibly passionate about doing that. So for that first week of July, but a call for speakers for TeamsFest will go throughout July. We'll then go to a commit phase in August and September where we'll be selecting the the sessions, and we'll be planning with speakers moving forward promotion. And then in October, we will have TeamsFest as an event. So TeamsFest is coming, it's on its way. And also as well, we will go to the next European Teams user group. That's going to be on the 22nd of June. If you want to speak, you can apply at the link there, EuroTeamsUG.com/CFS. Vesku has put together a new form. Again, this is well in advance. So if you want to speak next month, or you want to speak in July, or if you want to speak in August, you absolutely can do it, because if you're not ready to have a session by next month, but you can a few months down the line, then please do apply. In 18 months, one thing hasn't changed, and that we're always looking for speakers to speak at the user group event. So if you yourselves, or anyone that wants to come along and speak on Teams, and they want to come and put their session together and have a stage, whether it's for practicing for another conference or whether it's practicing for another user group, everyone is welcome.